Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to the A24 project here on the Nerd Party, the podcast that takes you through the back catalogue and new releases of A24 whilst talking to the talent in front of and behind the camera. On today's show, we review Kogonada's After Yang, and with me as always to do that is Lee Hutchison. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one. It's been a few months since we've seen it, so it feels like it's overdue us really being able to dive into this one.
Yeah, because we briefly alluded to our thoughts, I think, on the Sundance recap episode of Filibuster, where I've been watching several films with my press pass, and you had paid, I think, $20 each for the two A24 films that screen there. One, you kind of regretted the purchase, and the other one was apparently worth the money. Where After Yang sits on that scale, we're about to find out. But before that, of course, we always like to have a little bit of A24 news, if possible, and there is some news this week. And apparently, A24 is expanding into international production and distribution because it has tapped up Rose Garnett, who is a director of BBC Film, and Piers Wenger, director of BBC Drama, and they are going to be joining A24 in May, and they will be looking at specifically international-based focused films and TV. So, I think we said at one point, A24, if you were looking to open up a London office, just give us a phone. But clearly they've gone for someone with slightly more experience in the world of TV production. So, what do you make of this news that it looks like potentially either they're looking for more projects to bring into the fold to distribute in America, and they want to find the cream of the crop of British talent, or do you think there's potential that A24 might finally expand into international distribution, given of course the fact that an A24 film, even if it's Universal or entertainment film, whatever, in the UK they do tend to get branded as an A24 film?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I think around this sort of same time, I think Netflix made sort of a very kind of similar move, and I wonder if it's things that we're kind of seeing now where there's so much backlog in America with shooting and filming, excessive costs as well. When you see that some of the most popular kind of A24 films over the past few years, certainly for us, you get movies like Under the Skin, the Souvenir movies that we've spoken about, really small British movies shot on a budget that have made quite an impact critically, and sort of with audiences as well. So yeah, I wonder if we're going to be in a position where we're going to be sort of seeing that breach into like, well, how do we continue to sort of stick within A24 sort of model, low budget, something that they can do really good kind of marketing with, and then sort of send on into the world and generate a profit and kind of go again. And I think a move like that will certainly be the case. You see sort of here in Scotland in particular, the increase in sort of movie production that's kind of going on here, and some of these films can be picked up really low prices and then sent on into the world, and bringing back quite a budget. You think of something like Lamb as well recently, low budget Icelandic movie, again purchased there. It certainly seems to be a market for really kind of pursuing that at the moment. And with A24, you think of what it was originally kind of like to an extent. It's kind of trailed off in the past few years a little bit, but they had like loads of movies a year. They were buying up movies and things from Sundance and from different festivals, etc., all around the world, and some of the quality was a little bit up and down. And then I think we've spoken about it perhaps sort of since that kind of Hereditary to Midsummer era, where it's kind of started to be maybe also just a few films a year and the quality is much higher, and whether they're sort of wanting to bring in back a little bit of quantity perhaps over quality all the time might be there as well.
Yeah, will we see a breach into UK elevated horror, perhaps? But A24 putting their stamp on BBC, because they're clearly looking to expand into this. BBC, they've already worked with BBC Film already with the Souvenir. Parts 1 and Part 2 were both partly financed and produced by BBC Films. So clearly, there's enough trust in the between the two that there's clearly more projects on the horizon. I think they are both actually working with Joanna Hogg on her next film, which I think is going to be distributed by A24, particularly, well, probably in the States at least. And apparently they're also collaborating on a title called God's Creatures, which stars Emily Watson and Paul Mescal. So lots to look forward to, and I guess we'll have to see how that impacts their strategy going forward. But again, if they need any people to work on the marketing or promotion side of it in the UK, or even to set up a physical A24 shop, the Wes Anderson ones always did very well when they did pop up sort of shops and exhibitions and stuff like that. Just need a pop up A24 shop to flog those expensive candles, which in the rest of the UK would seem expensive, but in London, yeah, they probably get away with it.
I can picture it already in Covent Garden.
Because I did see, Neon in America were doing like the worst person in the world, a jumper, and someone said we're now witnessing the A24ification of Neon, and that they were producing merch, expensive merch to go with their films.
Didn't Neon say they wouldn't, like, it was a clear dig at A24 of like, we're never going to sell a $45 candle, and I think we should bring it up because we're a big fan of her obviously on this podcast. I think you own one of it still, but Neon really sort of had a partnership with KFC, did they? Or was this something KFC did on their own, where they made sort of the black sheep style jumper that Princess Diana famously wore, and they did sort of a black chicken one that you could get from their website or so on, and obviously that was a Neon film. Am I correct with that? I've kind of forgotten a little bit.
I don't know if this was, I think this might have been a UK marketing gimmick. I don't know if it actually went on the States. They made a big deal of it in the UK, and yeah, so it might have been. I'm struggling now to think off the top of my head who actually distributed Spencer here in the UK. You just kind of assume, the branding in the US is so strong that you kind of filters over here. But I don't think they were yet. But I think everyone needs to make the bucks these days.
It was STX Entertainment, Film Nation Entertainment, Topic Studios, and Neon were the mix. So I would imagine, based on the UK, obviously we've just seen Red Rocket, and I think Film Nation did that, and they've done quite a few A24 films as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was Film Nation and STX Entertainment that distributed it here in the UK. So Neon will maybe get a pass from that one.
Yeah, and I mean it's such a random collaboration. I mean, it's when you think about it, it's a perfect tie-in to the final scene of Spencer. But there are some other crazier tie-ins currently, perhaps with the other Colin Farrell film out today, the Batman, teaming with the likes of Cafe Nero to have a Riddler-inspired mystery-flavored hot chocolate, or Batman Oreos. Yeah.
Don't forget the Batman pizza of all things as well, Dallas.
Is there a Batman pizza? Oh, wait. I thought that was a joke. I thought that was just someone who cut their pizza to look like a bat.
No, that was genuinely a thing in America.
Because I saw that picture and it looks like you'd be paying for a normal sized pizza, but you basically get about half the pizza you would have just due to the shape of it.
And you get it as well. I've seen Licorice Pizza finally in New York, and Ellie is distributing a Licorice Pizza that you can buy, and you get like a digital code to download the movie if you spend it. So I don't know how much they're charging for the pizza. Like, to buy the movie on Apple TV is like $20 at the moment, so it must be like a premium kind of product. I have yet to see pictures of what it looks like, but I have seen that it is being distributed. Alana Haim posted she had one on Instagram the other week as well.
I mean, you see, in the UK, they would have just got away with just, giving out a packet of those licorice wheel sweets that you used to get. So, but yeah, a licorice pizza, more controversial than ham and pineapple, apparently. But hey, we're not here to talk about pizza. We're here to talk about After Yang. When his young daughter's beloved companion, an android named Yang, malfunctions, Jack searches for a way to repair him. In the process, Jack discovers that life has been passing by in front of him, reconnecting with his wife and daughter across a distance he did not know was there. So this was directed by Gogonada, who did the wonderful Sublime Columbus in 2018. They also starred Haley Lou Richardson in this film. You've got the stars Colin Farrell, who is creeping up on his Batman co-star Robert Pattinson. He's now up to 3, tied there with Oscar Isaac and Finchy from The Office, of all people, as A24's most prolific actor, and also as Jodie Turner-Smith as well. So, I mean, before we dive into After Yang, I guess I want to get your thoughts on Columbus. I think we both saw this at the Glasgow Film Festival in I think it would have been 2018. I mean, what did you make of that film? And due to your feelings on that, how were you looking forward to this one?
I loved Columbus. That's the type of film I love. I am of the before trilogy kind of generation where I can just watch people just walking around, talking, just reflecting on things, what's good, what's bad about life. I find those sorts of films all too appealing. So yeah, it was one I thought was quite beautiful. And until that point, sort of Hayley Lou Richardson was the supporting actress in Edge of 17 that I thought had a bit of star quality. And it was great to see her in a kind of main role. And then for John Cho, by and large, as a huge Star Trek fan, he was Sulu and the kind of the new generation of movies that they made.
And don't forget MILF Guy #1 from American
and the MILF
Pie.
Guy, yeah, exactly. This huge cultural impact, but he was someone that when you saw interviews or some moments within these Star Trek movies, by and large, that he really showed some sort of star quality. And again, it's one of these movies where we've seen it with a lot of A24 films. Sometimes it's the kind of actors that you don't expect or that you kind of have typecast as certain people, whether it's the MILF man or someone that was just in that kind of teen movie that people seem to like. They seem to find really good ways of casting, and that was what Columbus did. And, if someone asked me about Ohio, I could not tell you a single thing about it, really. I kind of know some of about its political leanings and things like that, but I didn't know too much at all. And then with that, I discovered what a beautiful, place like Columbus in Ohio is, the architecture there and what a unique place. And, I suppose it's the same thing with a lot of films. Sometimes it's just that exposure, isn't it, that to the world where you're like, so this is what kind of life is, and you come away not just having an insight into someone, but a world and a place that you've never been or never would have considered going.
I absolutely adored the film when I saw it in Glasgow. It's just like one of those ones where you just, I mean, let's be honest, not a huge amount happens in the film, but sometimes, like you say, those are the best films to watch. It's just, you're just with two people and it's just about it's about a feeling that washes over you. And it was just such a calming, meditative movie. And like you, I didn't know much about Columbus, Ohio before. I hadn't really heard of it, but then, it's somewhere that, sounds really interesting. And I mean, I don't want to I'm not going to speculate. Well, actually, I am going to speculate because that's where I'm going with the sentence. But it was interesting that I'd never heard of Columbus, Ohio until this film came out. And then suddenly a Aberdeenshire-based brewery decided to set up their first US brewery in that very location. So I can only assume that the managing director of a certain controversial beer company must have been a Coconut fan. After Yang, I mean, I guess we have to start by talking about a particular scene which will be, has already dropped online. I want to know, have you been practicing? Are you ready to go on opening night when it eventually opens in the UK, run up to the front of the screen and then perform the dance sequence from the opening credits perfectly?
I'm one of those people, I love motion and movement in cinemas, and once that kind of started, I was like, I'm immediately on board with this film. Like that is my cup of tea.
It didn't matter where it went after that. It was like, I just know I'm going to love this film.
I mean, one thing that I picked up that actually really annoyed me yesterday when I was kind of getting the website sort of prepped for dropping this episode, I went into like the A24 like YouTube page to get the trailer to put on the web page that we kind of always accompany our show notes with. And what I discovered was that they haven't in fact put an After Yang trailer up on the A24 page, but they have, like, obviously on their Twitter account this week added sort of the intro to the movie, which was slightly annoying and poor of them, I thought.
Yeah, I think it's something that was one of the main talking points that sort of came out of. There was two scenes I think that people were really buzzing about following the Sundance screening, and this was one of them. And yeah, it's the kind of thing that you kind of hope that people would experience first of all, like for the first time in a cinema screen. So obviously people are going to be buzzing about this, I guess, the potential for the memification of another A24 scene. Do you think it will have the same cultural impact as another actual science fiction film, another A24 science fiction film, which had a very interesting and much copied dance sequence, Ex Machina? Do you think it has the potential to overtake that as the number one dance sequence in an A24 film? And also have other songs put over the top of it. I mean, this is like a 2.5 minute long sequence. The Ex Machina one was about 20 seconds that they put every song over. Would they be able to do it? Because the choreography is quite tough, I think, on this one.
Yeah, I think it's going to be difficult. I mean, I never sort of considered that, but they'll 100% they'll be. I remember there was like an Ex Machina Twitter account years ago that just sort of like put music themes over it, and I kind of
it was like
watched
a different song every day or something for about a month.
that made me just crack up every single time, and I think something like this will happen. I mean, the fact that, I mean, I think if you were being slightly cynical,
We always
them
are.
putting that clip up in like HD quality that can be easily screen grabbed onto a Twitter account means that that's sometimes the way people get it. I mean, I'm sure.
Are you saying that A24 are gaming the system and actively encouraging this?
I think that's probably what's happening, and things like that bring people. I mean, how many people probably came into Ex Machina off the back of that clip and video and so on? I mean, it happens and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I think they've seen a market there. I'm just disappointed that they've put up that online and not onto their YouTube page. Basically a trailer, which is a bit disappointing.
I now have images of people watching Ex Machina for the first time and then doing the Leonardo DiCaprio meme, pointing at the screen when it gets to the dance number and going, oh, that's the movie. Oh, that's where I've seen that from.
Yeah, that'll happen. There'll be like a thing of going like, name this meme. This meme came from a movie called After Yang, directed by Kuganda.
I have to admit, I have used the Know Your Meme site a couple of times to try and figure out what something was. So, I mean, so when we get into the meat and bones of, well, I say the meat and bones, I mean, are there meat and bones in an Android? I don't know. It depends on the type of Android. But this is a film which, for me, I sort of looked at it as like an inverse AI, artificial intelligence, where instead of the family rejecting their AI and him going off to find his own path in the world, this is where they find themselves incomplete, almost, where one of their one actually accidentally sort of shuts down. You know, he's portrayed as like the big brother of adopted daughter Mika, but also clearly I think functions as like the au pair, housekeeper, and friend to the busy parents, and also, of course, he's then the fourth member of their monthly virtual dance quartet. And when he goes, it's not as simple as just replacing a battery. It seems that these androids are treated almost like an Alexa device or even like an iPhone, where and you take them into the shop and they basically, instead of repairing it, they're basically saying, oh yeah, no, it's have you considered the new model, the Yang 2.0 or something like that? And I mean, it sort of perfectly ties in with this sort of disposable technology culture and stuff like that. But Mika is very upset, and the dad, played by Colin Farrell, takes it upon himself to try and find a solution to get him working again. And what he discovers is essentially, I mean, this isn't really spoiler territory, but he discovers that there was essentially like a hard drive within Yang that was actually saving what feels like sort of memories and stuff. And there's like an exploration of the debate about AIs and can they learn to love? Can they develop emotions and stuff like this? I mean, what did you make of this sort of exploration of what technology could potentially mean, but then also how it also allowed Jake to reflect on what he was missing out on in life as well?
I thought it was beautiful, and you know I'll touch on it a bit more. But isn't that what kind of science fiction's about? And I was we've got an episode drop in a couple of weeks with one of the actors from The Souvenir, and they starred in an episode of Black Mirror. And we spoke about that kind of briefly in the interview because it was a show I was really fascinated about, especially those first 2 seasons where it was kind of a bit darker, a bit more melancholy, a bit small scale. And that's the type of sci-fi I really enjoy. And, it's always about how does technology impact your life, change things, etc. And with a film like this, like, that's the best way to tell a story sometimes. We've seen it with so many films about, like, we're going to make a movie about a person that's kind of looking back. They've perhaps wasted their life. They've not maybe spent enough time with their family. How are they viewed and so on. And we've gone through that journey. But then sometimes the best sci-fi is like, well, how can we tell that story with a science fiction twist? And obviously in this case, we see things through the eyes of a robot and so on. And I think probably a thing that it's probably safe to say that nearly all of us have done on one level or another these past 2 years with COVID-19, isolations, lockdowns, not seeing friends and family, is that kind of self-reflection, introspection, just kind of looking back on our kind of lives and where we've what brought us to this moment, whether we look around and we feel happy with the people that we've got with us that we're locked in, or are we alone and unhappy, trying to address certain issues. And we've all gone through that, and it's taken a global pandemic, but in this case it's going through the eyes of a kind of family robot and so on. And I think that's sci-fi in its purest element, and I think it does it really well. And there was a great line that gets used, I think I've got it written down here, was like, his existence mattered and not just to us and so on. And I've heard people kind of talk about recently where it's like, that's what people want from life, isn't it? Where you want to be able to have your final moments and look like that, people, I matter to people. And I think that's a really powerful thing. And that love that people can have for this robot, it's not like a terrifying robot or a killer robot, or it's got some sort of ulterior motive or something like that. It's a member of the family. It's loved, and that is something much like maybe technology, if I'm being generous, that we do take for granted sometimes. I had someone recently where they had accidentally damaged their MacBook, and there's always one of these things you think, oh, it's going to cost this money and all that sort of stuff. And why are you getting disappointed about a laptop? You can always buy a new one. But when you think about how we use technology these days, it's easy to be cynical about things, but our phones, how many amazing memories do that hold of pictures with our loved ones, our cats, our family members, voice notes, WhatsApp messages that chart an entire relationship with thousands of messages and pictures, and first times people maybe type I love you in written form, etc. And when those things are damaged, it's easy to be cynical, but the reality is those are really powerful and things that have become personal, almost part of the family. And I think we should be kind to perhaps those technology and those attachments.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point, because I think it wouldn't be until you're faced with the situation of losing or having it stolen or it breaking and just realizing how much you actually depend on it. I think younger people probably may potentially feel it more. Sort of my generation, whatever, we grew up with we actually used to print out our photos. We would get them developed and we would have photo albums and stuff like that. But these days it is all on your phone, and unless you're very diligent about backing everything up to a hard drive, there is potential that you could, in just the blink of an eye, lose everything, not just like the work that you've been doing that day, but like you say, photos, memories, voice notes. Some people are good at using Facebook as sort of virtual photo albums and stuff like that to chart, their lives and stuff like that. But again, servers can go down. We could lose anything. We've talked about on podcasts before about having digital copies of movies where technically you don't actually own them. And if Apple decided one day that they weren't going to have that movie anymore, suddenly it's gone. It's like you could lose stuff. And I think what this film does is really well is sort of it shows just to like one family, and in particular one man, how out of touch he is. I think with everything, he's created this buffer between himself and his family where he's got this robot android to sort of supervise his daughter when he's not there, when he's off working. the interactions that he has with his family are predominantly through video screens or over phones and stuff like that. So there's a technological barrier there. What Yang's absence does is forces him to confront, just how much he has been missing. And, I think that's just a really sort of beautiful thing because, I think there's definitely shades of other science fiction films like Blade Runner for me, where if you drill right down into it, it's like the central theme of a man who's failed to fully embrace life is shown how to find beauty in the world through a robot who wishes for nothing more than to experience life for himself. And that's what Yang hints at with this hard drive of memories and stuff, and a connection that he's got with one particular girl who's played by Haley Richardson, where it's like he's longing for something more. He's seen through this family what life can be like, and he wants it for himself. And I think it's all kind of encapsulated, I think, in one particular scene, my favourite scene in the entire movie, and one with probably the most unexpected impression that I've seen this year, and actually several years, where on paper it's just two people talking about tea, but I think it just says so much about not only Yang, but also where Colin Farrell's at and his life. And, I think it was just an amazing thing. And the fact that he does this bursts into a Werner Herzog impression, it's quite clearly that's who he's going for. And, it's such an interesting choice to do that. But I think it works perfectly. And yeah, it's my favourite scene in the film. What about yourself?
Yeah, I think it's that. I think when I watched it, and I'm desperate to rewatch it again. I think it's a little while yet before it still comes out to the UK. And I think when I watched a movie like this, I almost had a very kind of similar feeling I had when I watched The Green Knight recently. Was that I'm kind of blown away by sort of like the production design, the score, the music, Mitski performing on it, Werner Herzog impressions. Like, this is what I kind of go to the cinema to find and to see. And, it's one of those ones you watch this film and you realize it's something special. I think you ask anyone, some people say it's the opening credits, it'll be the Werner Herzog impression, it'll be the conversation about tea, kind of some of the, the way they world build in such a small way, the representation that's on screen. It's one of those films where you're just really happy to have seen something like that, and you want to get behind it and champion it. And that's a feeling that you get very, very rarely. I mean, you would think at the ratio that myself and you watch films, like screeners, film festivals, Netflix, doing a podcast where we go through, an entire company's sort of filmography, you don't get that feeling very often. And I remember just sort of sitting in my living room when I was streaming my Sundance film, just thinking, oh wow, this is one of those films. And it's good that in America today it's going to drop onto Showtime, but it'll also be available in cinemas. And I just hope people go see this movie and get as excited about it as I was. I think it's really, really special.
Yeah, no, for me, I was just checking through my letterbox to make sure, but yeah, it is the only new release in 2022 that I've given 5 stars to. I've rewatched a couple of 5-star films from last year, but yeah, no, it's the only one that, as soon as the film finished, I just knew that this is like, when you're sort of trying to put together a review and put together your rating, and it's like, in the end, it's like, I had a real connection with it, but also, looking back on it, it's like, I couldn't really find any fault with it. So therefore, really, it has to be 5 stars, doesn't it? I think there's certain moments that people will cling to, but then for me, it's also just like the little moments, like cinematographer Benjamin Loeb is another star of this film because he finds the beauty in the mundane, whether it's just, a picture of a t-shirt or a shot of a tree or the scene with the ramen. I mean, I think I felt my stomach rumbling as soon during that scene. I was like, I really want to order some ramen now. Oh gosh, that looks so good. And it's just the little flashes of everyday life that sort of remind you why, it's so good. And yeah, it's science fiction at its most meditative. I think it's just a film which, like Columbus, just sort of washes over you, I think. And part of the film's success, I think, is the continued. Is that a continued rise? Actually, it's not really. I think we've known for a long time how good Colin Farrell is. I know he started off in a sort of going down a slightly different path. People were trying to peg him towards these sort of SWATs in action films and stuff like that. But I think he was also a bit of a wild man in that. But then he sort of sobered up, and then he sort of gone down this group. I think it started for me, I think, with In Bruges in 2008. That's when I realised how good an actor he was. He was just phenomenal in that. And then films like The Lobster, Killing of a Sacred Deer have really showcased his talent. I mean, what do you make of Colin Farrell at the moment in his career and stuff like that? I mean, is this the kind of area where you would like to see him remain? Or, I mean, he has proved that, he's a versatile actor, because he is also in The Batman this week, and very good in that as well.
Yeah, I am old enough to remember watching him on Ballycus Angel and him being the best thing in this rubbish Irish TV show about like a local priest or something like that. And Colin Farrell was a bit of a bad boy, and he's one of those people. I think if you're of my generation and watched British TV, you always remember sort of Ballycus Angel, and then obviously how his career continued to grow. I mean, I even remember that he had a bit of a sex tape scandal that he appeared in as well. And, he appeared in movies like SWAT, for example. And, he was always kind of all over the place in terms of what he picked, which is really exciting, similar to Robert Pattinson to an extent. He's done a bit of the big franchise stuff, in terms of these Fantastic Beasts movies, and then he will go along and star in something like The Killing of a Sacred Deer, etc. But as more of a comment than a question, I was kind of thinking this week where, this movie is undoubtedly the counter-programming release in America this week to The Batman. And The Batman is good. We spoke about it on our other podcast. I think you liked it a bit more than me, but, it was good. I think we both wanted more Colin Farrell, who is excellent. And I think I read that he's going to be doing some sort of Gotham spin-off show about sort of his character after the events of the movie, which, fair enough. But I was kind of thinking where I've not seen, and I follow a lot of like indie writers and reviewers and critics and fans, and After Yang seems to be sort of like, despite the fact it is the counter-programming, it seems to be not getting the attention it deserves. And I've been listening to a really interesting podcast series where it kind of talks about the rise and fall of Ain't It Cool News, and sort of the transition that went from, how film critics were kind of revered and viewed to sort of a lot of the fans now are, your John Campea style characters where they watch just the big movies. They're sitting there banging on 3-hour videos about the Batman or, Spider-Man and what Spider-Man means. And they did a video where they're watching the ticket sales of Spider-Man, which I can't imagine wrapping my head around, but whatever. But there's almost the idea of like, where are people advocating for the After Yangs? Like, it's there, it's option today. It's a Colin Farrell movie, and it annoys me that I think a lot of online people are liars and frauds when they say that they are science fiction fans, that they want original movies and programming. I like sci-fi, and for a lot of sci-fi fans, that means they're a big fan of Star Wars or Marvel or Star Trek, etc. And they're always like, well, where's the original sci-fi movies? And we're not talking about a Moonfall here, but we're talking about an After Yang. I mean, this is a science fiction movie set in the future, robots, characters, death, meditation. This is what the sci-fi that a lot of us grew up on, or even those that maybe watched episodic TV similar to your Star Trek shows, where it's like a moral or a parable of the week. And why are people not advocating for this? Why is there no huge amount of champions going, if you check out Batman, but also feel free to check out After Yang. It doesn't have to be one or the other, but where's the fan base for things like this? Where are the critics? I think people get more excited about, the IP movies, the big movies, than what I essentially think you should be doing your job of also highlighting movies like this and getting them out into an audience, and not just having to rely on them finding it in a meme or something. It's, if I wasn't following sort of A24's filmography or film, and I had to kind of go on Empire Magazine, different film websites, where would I be finding out about this movie and so on? And I find that really disappointing, and I worry this film will make a fraction of its money just now when it drops up against the Batman, and that's acceptable. It will find life elsewhere on digital and word of mouth, etc. But why isn't this film being given a chance of being people's second movie that they go see this week? Or if they want to have a tonic to a big superhero movie, well, check out this movie, because I'm sure back in the days of a lot of the original film critics, this film would have been championed so highly and would be in top 10 lists of the years, etc. I'm just a bit disappointed.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree with you, and you've reminded me of the disappointment I felt when Colin Farrell turned into Johnny Depp at the end of the first Fantastic Beasts movie. It's like you've got this amazing actor, and then you swapped him out for Johnny Depp, and then of course, given how that franchise has gone, they probably should have just stuck with Colin Farrell in the role, to be honest. But yeah, no, it's a difficult one, because there was a nice buzz coming out of Sundance, and then I think it almost, this is not a criticism of their strategy, whatever, but I think there did seem to be a bit of a deflation following the announcement that it was going to be on Showtime. I think basically, like a US streaming service, it is getting some theatrical releases, and you've talked about a counterpoint to Batman, but perhaps you might not want to watch Batman at all. And quite interesting, if you basically stop the film just as it goes into the end credits, you could potentially watch After Yang twice in the same time that it could take you to watch the Batman once. So that's an option out there. You could get more Colin Farrell. It'd be interesting to. I think it just dropped yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to watch it. Seeing how much of a proportion of the Hot Ones interview that Colin Farrell is doing is dedicated to the Batman, and how much is dedicated to After Yang. I'd like to see the transition between eating a hot wing to talking about this movie. But it's one which I think once people find it, I think it's really going to find a lot of hardcore fans. People are really going to love this, but like you say, it's the how do you find it in the first place. And I think this film is probably going to go along in waves. I think, to be honest, I think it's got potentially a better chance of finding an audience in the UK once it gets released here than it may do in America, where it potentially will get lost in the shuffle if it gets the right distributor. Curzon, I'm thinking of you. I think they could really do a nice rollout over here. They will be able to easily, give it a primary release or a potential counter programming one across the summer. Where actually, no, wait, the World Cup is not over the summer. I'm sure there's another sporting event that they could counter program against, and I think it would be able to find an audience. I think they would be able to do a lot with it over here. But yeah, it's how do you get people shouting about it? And so yes, you've reminded me that I need to go on Twitter and share my review and get people watching it over this weekend, because I mean, yes, I'll probably watch the Batman again, but if I do happen to find I've got access to Showtime in the States, then yes, I will try and watch it again, because yeah, it's a film which I absolutely 100% adore.
Yeah, I think we both adore it too, and I think we're about to start a little bit of a wave of some really interesting kind of A24 for movies now.
Yep, well. I'm gonna do like a Father Ted stand outside the Batman screenings with a placard or something that says "Go see After Yang instead," or "After Batman, After Yang." There we go. I've come up with a marketing campaign. That's it. I'm going to start it now. But I mean, just thank you for listening. I think hopefully we have encouraged you to go watch After Yang. It is available in the US on, I think it's Showtime, and also there will be select screenings if you can find one across the States as well. But it's important. I think it's an important film because, look into the future and wonder, one should never lose sight of the now. Live in the moment, because as a famous android once said, these moments will be lost in time like tears in rain. We'll see you next time. Bye.